create and tell an original story based on a personal experience. Mr. Timer, this is an 8 to 10 minute presentation. Do you like to travel? Most of us do. Though we prefer it to be under ideal conditions, without a lot of pressure, to be somewhere at a specific time. And when it's a last-minute spontaneous plan, including renting a car in a different city with an early closing time, it gets to be a bit more complex. This is the story of one such recent trip. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster, past District 58 South Carolina Governor, Douglas Wilson, as he shares his personal story, road trip.
The weekend started out okay, but by Sunday it had gone completely downhill. Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, it was a Saturday morning and I was at the District Executive Committee meeting when one of my partners got a phone call. A dear friend of ours, Edith Gann, the mother of Pat Gann, who was a past district governor and was on my deck team when I was the district governor. She had died. She was 93 years old. A very dear friend and somebody dear to a lot of people throughout our entire district in South Carolina. I went home and I told my wife JoAnn about that, and she was saddened as well because now we have to figure out when the funeral is going to be so that we can make plans to be in Rock Hill to attend that funeral. We were close enough to the family that that was a no-brainer. But Sunday, JoAnn got the call. Her youngest brother had passed away that morning. Now it's a decision of which funeral is going to come first, what day is it going to happen on, one's in Ohio, one's in North Carolina, what's going to happen. And it wasn't until Wednesday afternoon when we finally had the game plan. Her brother was to be buried at the Dayton National Cemetery on Friday morning in a full military funeral. Now, the question is, how are we going to get there? You know, I drive a van, and you know that van is a piece of crap. And that van had just had a lot of money sunk into it with a transmission. And so I'm trying to figure out, I don't trust that van to go all the way to Ohio and back, so we need to rent a car. I called Hertz. I didn't bother to call Enterprise because I'd gone through that rigmarole with them once before, and Hertz didn't have any automobiles. Thursday morning, we're searching for an automobile. The only automobile in town was in Columbia, and that's not in town, Joseph, if you hadn't figured that out. So we made arrangements, and I called them just to be sure, because on the internet, they said they closed at 6 o'clock. No problem. I'll go to my meeting, we'll come home, we'll get packed up. We got plenty of time to get to Columbia by 6 o'clock. We'll leave the van there, head off to Ohio, and we're good. When I called the guy on the phone, he says, we close at 5. It's now 3 o'clock, and we have not yet packed the van. So we rush around having to pack everything up, get it into Columbia, and we left late, and the traffic made us even later, but the guy said, don't rush, don't get a ticket, I'll be here. Have you ever had anybody tell you that, don't rush, don't get a ticket, I'll be here? And when you got there, they weren't there? Have you ever experienced that? Well, this was not one of those cases. The man was, in fact, there. He was a person who was integrous. He was true to his word. And the bad part of it was that we were expecting to get a Camry to drive to Ohio. Well, it turns out the Camry had a broken windshield. We got an upgrade. For the same money, we got a Kia Optima. Beautiful, metallic burgundy. It is a sweet car. Just looking at it, I fell in love. So we jumped in the car, but now we've got to figure out what we're going to do with the van, because you don't want to leave it here, because this is a bad part of the town. It's right next to the ballpark, downtown, UG and Blossom. So you don't want to leave it here. So we said, I got a good idea. We'll leave it at a 24-hour Walmart. Cars out there kind of blend into the woodwork. Found out, no 24-hour Walmart in Columbia. Sumter's got a 24-hour Walmart. Columbia doesn't have a 24-hour Walmart. Next best guess, Lexington Hospital. 24-hour operation, under the lights, no problem. Park it at the Lexington Hospital, hit the road for Ohio. Now I want to back up a few bars here because I got up at 5:30 on Thursday morning. I'd had about 3 hours of sleep the night before. And this is now 7:30 at night when we're heading out to go to Ohio. We have 11 and a half hours to get to Ohio in time for an 8:30 funeral. It's a non-stop, no holds barred, no stopping to rest, because if you get tired, that's too darn bad. You've got to be there in time for that funeral. So we cruise on down the highway, and let me tell you, a Kia Optima, it should be your next car, because this was one sweet ride. Now, I like to drive. I especially like to drive at night. It seems to calm me and relax me. Now, Ryan had been up all night the night before helping JoAnn prep for this trip, so neither one of them had had any sleep. I figured they're going to sleep while I'm driving. No, they're afraid Dad's going to fall asleep, so they stayed awake. How they did that, I don't know, because I get relaxed and I'm in the groove and I'm just chilling out, driving. I'm having a grand time, and they're like this, afraid of everything that's going to happen. We stopped once and got some gas. We cruised into Ohio. We looked around a little bit. We stopped at a place to have breakfast, did a little online research, and found out that the funeral home was just up the street that I had gotten off the freeway on. I didn't have the time to do any maps, so what I had done was go to the store and buy one of these big East Coast maps, you know, the one with every state on the East Coast on it. And Ryan's in the back there trying to figure it around. I said, okay, we'll take this route, we'll take that route. And we figured out how to get to Dayton, Ohio. We had breakfast. We cruised on down to the funeral home. We're the first ones there. It's 7 o'clock in the morning. The funeral's at 8:30. So I parked in the parking lot. I kind of sat in my almost a Tai Chi pose there. I went into a meditative state. I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes. There's something energizing about meditation, Dolly. You don't need as much sleep if you got a little chance to meditate. So I'm going to meditate for 30 minutes. 15 minutes after I start my meditation, there's a tap on the window. Can you move your car? So we got people coming in here for a funeral. I said, well, I'm the sister of the deceased. I ought to be in the funeral procession. Oh, well, just turn it around then. And we turned it around. By then, everybody's getting there. So we went inside the building to change clothes because we had left in what we were wearing. And now it's time to change into funeral clothes. They had a nice service, a lovely service. And I got to worry a little bit. You know, we're speakers. We watch people get up and speak in front of a group all the time. And this gentleman walks up, steps behind the lectern, whips out his pack of papers that he's got, puts it on the lectern. I'm going, oh no, it's going to be a snooze fest. An undertaker talking to a group of people mourning a deceased. We're going to be snoozing before it's over. And then, in a very low and smooth voice, he looked at his notes, he looked up, and without looking back at his notes for the next 30 minutes, talked about Don and the family, and what Don had done for the family, and how he was in a better place now, and all the things he'd gone through, and all the wonderful family he had raised. And after that service, I commented that that was a nice service, and my fears were assuaged because he had done a wonderful job and hadn't put anybody to sleep. A lot of people were crying, as should be the case. And of course, the honor guard, the military bike riders who were there, the Veterans Guard that were there to escort him to the funeral. And we went off for quite some distance. I think there must be 20 miles from the place where we had the funeral service to where the funeral was. And it was, of course, in a large funeral cemetery with a lot of military people there. It was the National Cemetery, after all. So after that, we went to the family reception. JoAnn had a time to get caught up with her family members, and they all discussed and had fun and talked about Don and how wonderful he had been, and the fun things they'd done with him, and the fun times they'd had with the family. But now it's time to get back on the road because we have to be in Rock Hill by tomorrow morning. It's now Saturday. It's now Friday afternoon. So we drove into West Virginia, and I must have taken a wrong turn somewhere, Sandra, because I'm up 7 north in West Virginia, and I'm saying I'm supposed to be on 35 south, going toward Charleston, West Virginia. So I stopped at a gas station, I dug out my map, and I looked at my map, and I said, I have definitely taken a wrong turn. And one of the guys that knows the area said, well, just go up here a ways, and your 35 will go over to 77, and you take 77 south, and you'll be on the road. What he did not tell me was that this up the road a ways in West Virginiese is 20 miles down the highway. You're going to pick up the road that takes you over to 77 to go 20 miles south. So we went 40 miles out of our way to get back on the highway we needed to be on to go south to North Carolina. So we decided that we needed to get out of West Virginia as soon as possible. But we did take time to have breakfast at an all-night Waffle House. It was actually a Waffle House called the Omelet Spot. And they served up a pretty good omelet, as a matter of fact. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to see a veteran come in to have breakfast. And I called the waitress aside and I said, whatever he's buying, put it on my tab. And I said, when he kind of looked over at me, I says, from one veteran to another, sir, thank you for your service. He says, welcome home. Nice touching moment. Back on the highway, we're well fed. It's midnight on Friday night. We've still got 8.5 hours to go to get to Charlotte or to Rock Hill, South Carolina. And I said, the first rest stop we hit, I'm taking a snooze break. Because by this time I'd had just that 30 minutes, well, not even a full 30 minutes of meditation time, no sleep in that 2-day period of time. So we pulled off into a rest stop, and I woke up at 5:30, and I'd only been asleep like about 3 hours, but I'm wide awake. It's time to get back on the road. We need to get closer to North Carolina, closer to South Carolina, and we need to have breakfast. So we pulled in to a Starbucks, and we jumped their Wi-Fi. And we figured out where the funeral home was. It was actually not a funeral home. It was actually not a funeral. It was a Catholic Mass in honor of Edith Gann. Now, I don't know whether you know or not, but I'm not an especially religious person. And I have sat through 2- and 3-hour Masses before in my exploration of different religions and what they do and how they do it. I was not especially enamored, even for a dear friend, to sit through a 2-hour Catholic Mass. So we said, well, we'll plan to be there just a little bit late, just comfortably late. But did you know that there's a big basketball to do in Charlotte? And the traffic there was like rush hour on a busy day during the week when people going to work. And it was bumper to bumper for about 20 miles getting through Charlotte. We arrived at that service 40 minutes late. And as I walked in, there was a Toastmaster there. I could tell because he had his Toastmaster's pin on. He gave me that look like, well, the service is almost over. To myself, I'm saying, well, good. That's fine. We're here for the family, not for the service. And we walked in, they conducted the service, they finished the service, and we had a chance to say hi to the different Toastmasters who were there to honor Edith, to say hi to Pat and to give her a big hug. And she says, thank you for coming. I says, how could we not? You know, Edith was important to us as well. And then we had a reception, and we got to have a light lunch, and we got to get back on the road. By this time, I'd had maybe 6 hours of sleep, because I love a road trip. Do you love a road trip? When I'm on the road, I don't care what the purpose is. If I've got a nice ride under me, something nicer than that little rundown car that Lefford thinks was his dream car, but many, many years ago, a sweet ride like a Kia Optima, I'm just a cruising until I got down just south of Rock Hill and I ran into I said, whoa, I'm awake. We finished off the trip by going to a movie, going to Arabesque in Columbia and coming home, and then I did thoroughly and 100% crash because my body had reached its breaking point. I lay down on my couch and I was out for a solid 8 hours. And that is the story of our recent road trip. I'm Toastmaster.
Wow.